proper motivation, which consists of 3 parts. Refuge field, visualize Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all those in Bodhisattvas. And particularly the lineage master, the lineage master of confluence of the Bodhicitta practice, Lama Sedingpa, the great master from Indonesia in the 11th century AD, and Adishita Bhagavashri who finally brought all of them together into the confluence. And then what to visualize and how to visualize. You visualize them as your mothers, and you as the very tender young child, vulnerable, coming home, very sad, bullied by elder children in school, and your mothers are waiting there to give you embrace, total love, affection, and so forth. And it's the only thing is that our karma is so heavy that we cannot see the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in that fashion. In actuality, they are in that state. They are watching us. What are we doing now? Bodhicitta field, your 2 grandparents on your 2 sides, all of family members, and all the relationship makes around you, leaving none aside. Here, you are the mother, and all others are like your children. Take them home, and you are there to give full love, affection, tender care, and embrace. And the purpose of this practice is finally to follow this path, internal journey, the journey of the mind, cleansing the mind, Gade Gade, Bala Gade, Bala Samgade, Bodhiswaha. And the manner in which we cleanse the mind to awaken this Buddha nature within us is through, first of all, identifying the errors of the mind, which are of 2 kinds, afflictive obscurations and cognitive obscurations. Afflictive obscurations, which are further 3 kinds, afflictions, contaminant karmas, and active seeds. And the cognitive obscurations, which is reflected in the form of self-centered attitude. And the 2 are to be eliminated by the counter forces. Afflictive obscurations, which are all rooted in self-grasp ignorance, is eliminated by introducing the wisdom of emptiness. And the cognitive obscuration, which is reflected in the form of self-centered attitude, is overcome by the altruistic bodhicitta, which cherishes others more than oneself. Okay. So with this in mind, and imagine that all sentient beings are joining you, and you are leading this group. With this mind, let's recite the from page 2. And huge by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma, you dispel all perverted views, to you the perverted Dharma I bear homage. And huge by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma, you dispel all perverted views, to you the perverted Dharma I bear homage. And huge by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma, you dispel all perverted views, to you the perverted Dharma I bear homage. Independent origination, there is no everlasting, no annihilation, no permanence, no coming, no going, no separateness, no sameness. I prostrate to the consummate Buddha, the supreme among all teachers, the one who taught this peace, which is freedom of vibrations. I prostrate to the mother of the Buddhas and of the hearers and Bodhisattvas, who through the knowledge of all is here seeking pacification to complete peace, who through the knowledge of past causes souls having migrated to achieve the aims of the world, and through possession of illumination to subdue us therefore the varieties and in all aspects. The one who has transformed irregular Rabbanikai, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, guard and protector to grow my creations. The one who has eliminated the rubber from such realizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who eternally and shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you the Buddha and my prostrations. Okay, please 7. The meaning of the mantra first. All phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Bodhisattva. cessation of processes well as to whatever we exhale. Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Deshan Tathagato Yavatat Deshan Chayo Nirodha Evan Vari Mahashamanaye Swaha. Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Deshan Tathagato Yavatat Deshan Chayo Nirodha Evan Vari Mahashamanaye Swaha. Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Deshan Tathagato Yavatat Deshan Chayo Nirodha Evan Vari Mahashamanaye Swaha. All phenomena arising causes, the causes that taught by the Bhagavad, the cessation of causes as well as taught by the grace here. Sanye Chonam Soke Chonam Nam Chanchoba Duda Nikya Sochi Dati Jinsoki Te Sonam Ki Dola Penche Sanje Jopasho Sanye Chonam Soke Chonam Nam Chanchoba Duda Nikya Sochi Dati Jinsoki Te Sonam Ki Dola Penche Sanje Jopasho Sanye Chonam Soke Chonam Nam Chanchoba Duda Nikya Sochi Dati Jinsoki Te Sonam Ki Dola Penche Sanje Jopasho. I go for refuge and turn my attention to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. By my accumulation of the practice of healing and so forth, may I become a Buddha that can all sentient beings. I go for refuge and turn my attention to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. By my accumulation of the practice of healing and so forth, may I become a Buddha that can all sentient beings. I go for refuge and turn my attention to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. By my accumulation of the practice of healing and so forth, may I become a Buddha that can all sentient beings. The next page. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today the Buddha's presence can everyone full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, page 17. Harsutra mantra. As we said this, remember to think of the Buddha Shakyamuni exhorting us that all miseries, they come from this self-grasping ignorance and self-centered attitude. And through cleansing these two, we don't have to we may not remain in the face of samsara. And he advising us, he exhorting us that come out of samsara, come out of the face of samsara, come towards a state of highest happiness by disclosing the ultimate source of happiness within you. And you hearing this melodious voice of the Buddha, you inspire you to parents, all the family members, all Tamil sentient beings towards this unraveling of the potential of the Buddhahood within yourself, and taking them along with you, that come along with me towards the enlightenment. Okay, with this, let's recite this sentence. Now what we'll do is 5 minutes breathing meditation. Okay, 5 minutes breathing meditation. Okay. Should they be here? Okay. Should they be, so basically, to make it very simple, the breathing meditation that we're going to do here is for 5 minutes. Yesterday we did it 21 cycles. So today, 5 minutes, it will be, for some it's going to be around like 108 cycles, and others will be less, others still more, depending on the length of the breath that you have. And so this breathing meditation, since that the instructions were already given, I'd like to quickly remind you of the 4 points. First one is the body posture. Body posture. And for the body posture, what I was emphasizing was on 2 points. One is to maintain the body upright. That is very important. Maintain the body upright, and slowly make it a habit to keep your body always upright. One. And then the number 2 is your eyes should not be closed. Eyes keep it half open and 45 degrees cast down, like this. Half open, 45 degrees cast down. Number 2. And then the other things is fine. Same cross-legged position, and the teeth and the lips in the natural course, breathing very naturally in the natural course, and the 2 hands joining. The tips of the 2 thumbs form a triangle, and the 2 hands in the resting state on our arms. So for all this is important. This is point number 1. Point number 2 is the focal point. Focal point is the position between your nose and upper lip. Nose and upper lip. This is where we're going to focus. And then as you focus your mind there, I keep in mind multitasking. Multitasking. While you focus your mind there, count your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, cycle 1. Breathe in, breathe out, cycle 2. And you don't need to chase after the breath, where now the breath is. Don't chase after the breath. Simply be aware that now the breath is entered, breath is gone out, entered, gone out. That's it. So entering, going out, inhalation, exhalation, combined together makes 1 cycle. So we just keep counting cycles, and in 5 minutes, it doesn't matter how many times. Then in some cases, in the middle, if you tend to lose track of the count, then you can go back. You can go back to count from 1 again, right? Okay. So this is focal point. Now, point number 3 and point number 4, the most important things to keep in mind. The most important things, point number 3 and point number 4. If you really want to succeed in your meditation, we must not miss point number 3 and point number 4. Eventually, so we tend to always go for shortcuts, and the shortcuts never work. Never work. It's very deceptive, it's very alluring, and then eventually we grow old. Same, age 20-year-old boy or girl eventually becomes 30. 31s become 40, 41s 50, 51s 60. Expecting a magic happening, expecting miracles happening, expecting shortcuts, and then eventually you end up nowhere. So instead, if you always go for the stable and very reliable, safe, the safety, that is always best. So we need to focus on point number 3 and point number 4. So eventually, with emphasis on these 2, and we see that there's a great success coming in the individual in terms of experience. So point number 3 is identifying the errors of meditation. And the errors of meditation, 2-fold: mental laxity and mental excitement. Mental laxity is where your mind becomes very heavy, inserviceable, and sloppy, and mind becomes very, the heavy and feels like lethargic. And whereas the opposite of that is mental excitement. where mind becomes overly active and it starts wandering, scattering here and there. These are the two mental flaws. Now, after identifying the two, then the job is to apply the remedies. That is point number 4. Point number 4 is so important. Without point number 4, then however many hours you may sit in the meditation posture, you are actually not meditating. It is simply self-deception. So this is so important to remind point number 4. Point number 4 is applying the remedies when the errors do happen. And what are the two remedies? Introspection and mindfulness. Introspection is like searching for the lost dog, lost pet dog. When you lose your dog, then you go and search for the dog. So this is introspection. Likewise, when your mind is not on the meditation, when you go and search where your mind is, this is introspection. Once you find the job of the introspection is done. Next is the job of the mindfulness, the job of the rope. Rope will tie the dog and bring it back home and tie it to the pillar at your house. Likewise, once you find that your mind is either distracted into excitement or into relaxed state, then you bring the mind back to the intended object of the meditation, which is the 4th point, within nose and upper ear. So this is known as mindfulness. So always keep in mind that we're not to miss the two remedies. Okay, with this in mind, 5 minutes breathing meditation. Are you ready? Okay. Yesterday we started the method of equalizing and exchanging self-others, teacher Bodhicitta, the method of equalizing and exchanging self-others. In the monastic universities, in Sera Tepung Ganden, there is a tradition. Some of you may be aware of that tradition. The debates, it is such a rigorous debates happening, monastic debates. Every time the debates in groups, say debates happen on 2 levels. One is the individual debates, one-on-one, and the one's group. Say all the monks, they come together, and then the sum would be the answers, and the rest would be there to take questions. And when the debate ends, what happens is that the tradition has it that the debates start from the lowest class. One of the students from the lowest class will stand up and ask a question to the defender. Then the others, all the seniors, will help that student to 2 more questions. So you have to defend the position. Then after a while, then second student from the next class. Slowly, then the students will be more and more senior students will. Then finally, the senior most. Then when it is time to stop the debate, then one of the junior most students will again stand up, which means that others will guess, okay, now this is the conclusion of the debate. One of the junior most students will stand up and then will throw the question. So here the question has nothing to do with debates. So the question is, the student will just pick up a very auspicious verse of Bodhicitta, And so the moment you won't believe, during the debates, all the monks, they were so rigorously involved there. The moment these auspicious words are being said as a gestural debate, all the monks will simply go into the meditative state. All the monks, instantly they will go in the meditative states. just reflect on the meaning of these words. For example, one of the verses which is so close to the hearts of all monks. And these are most of the verses, they come from Bodhicitta Through's book, Guided Bodhicitta Through, chapter 1. So one of the verses has again in Tibetan, Chanchu Simke Gyuna Gijiki, Kobe Zura Tambe Yambano, Joanum, Seshi Juji, Giovanum, Seshi Jujashin, Jidi, Hamichibi, Chachagyu. This is the verse. So in English, rough translation would be Chanchu Simke Gyuna Gijiki, the moment you generate this bodhicitta, Kobe Zura Tambe Yambano, Deshian, Seshi Jujashin, Jidi, Hamichibi, Chachagyu, all the sentient beings who are bound in samsara, they will hail, saying that now you have become the child of the Buddhas. And then you become the object of veneration by all the devas, all the celestial beings, and the humans alike. Okay, so what is it? This is so powerful. See, the moment you generate bodhicitta, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are the child of a president, daughter or son of a president, or a child, daughter, or son of a beggar, it doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're just lying on the street, or in the palace, or in the festival town, wherever, it doesn't matter. The moment you generate this bodhicitta within you, everybody, the human beings and the celestial beings alike, they will come to make prostrations to your feet. Even the kings of Indras and Brahmanas, they will come to make prostrations to you. It doesn't matter who you are. Okay, so what makes you so special is because of this mind of the bodhicitta, which is so precious, And this bodhicitta, and it says, Kana simge tambari jebi kebati kula chazishi. Kana nyoba chigan dedewe dewe chuneta de kebsuchi. It means that to this very precious mind of bodhicitta, Kana simge tambari jebi kebati kula chazishi. Whoever generates this mind, I will make prostrations. Kebati kula chazishi. Kana nyoba chigan dedewe chuneta de kebsuchi. And although somebody intends to harm this person, harms this person, and knowing that that person is going to harm you, still you only think about how to benefit that person. This is bodhicitta. It's so precious. Okay. So, okay. So should there be any mind which is something so appealing? There is this bodhicitta. Okay. So this bodhicitta, So of the two methods, what we are discussing was the second method, the method of equalizing self others, which has which second one has 9 steps, and of the 9 steps we finished the first one, and we're doing the second one, and second one is reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. Okay, so this practice, practice of Bodhicitta, this practice of Bodhicitta, in fact, all Buddhas, they reflected days and nights to see what is most beneficial to sentient beings. And they discovered that it is this Bodhicitta, the presence of which is the final healing, final panacea, medicine to heal the sentient beings from their miseries. And we all have this potential to be practiced to this Bodhicitta. Only thing is that we need practice. We need to practice it. Now for this practice, of course, it'll take time. It's not an easy task. Say, Bodhicitta on one hand, and the wisdom of emptiness on the other hand. There's the saying amongst the great saints that the wisdom of emptiness, to learn what wisdom of emptiness is, it will take so much time. Once you've learned it, to experience it is easy. This is the unique characteristic of the unique characteristic of the wisdom of emptiness. Unlike that, the Bodhicitta, just to learn about what Bodhicitta is very easy. Within, like, say, 2-3 days time or one week, you can get the whole complete import of what a Bodhicitta is like, the delusions, methods, and so forth. At the same time, after learning this and experiencing Bodhicitta, the great saints, they say it takes time. So therefore, it is very important for us, and keep in mind that finally, even for one's own benefit, let alone benefit other sentient beings, even for one's own benefit, one's own happiness, the best mind that we can possibly think of is Bodhicitta, which is the most precious one. So, with respect to the second method, Equalizing and Exchange self-others, which has 9 steps. So at the moment we are doing the second one, which is the reflect on the demerits of cherishing self. So this, we should be very creative, particularly in relation to the meditation of Bodhicitta. Say, we see that the self, so far, since time immemorial until now, we have been under the sway of this self-centered attitude. We have been just absorbed into the self-centered attitude. And what's the result of that? We need to think. We need to be very creatively thinking about the result of this self-centered attitude since time immemorial until now. So the before we think about it, see how much we are absorbed. We are simply being absorbed and carried away by the self-centered attitude. See, since the time we wake up till the next morning, including the dream, there our mind is so engrossed with self-centered attitude. And finally, what is the result that it has given rise to you? What benefit it has given rise to you? Nothing. The benefit is zero. So the more we think about the demerit of self-centered attitude, the more we will think of cherishing others. The more we will see the benefit of the bodhicitta. So the self-centered attitude, the more we think about its viciousness, how harmful this self-centered attitude is, we see that it is harmful in two ways. One, we have the perfect seed of happiness. We have the Buddha nature within us, and if we see that this Buddha nature, it comes out fully, then your happiness is forever guaranteed. You become like a sun which cannot be obscured by anything. And in our eyes, we may see the sun obscured. Sun is not obscured. The sun is obscured to our vision by the things in between us and the sun. But if you go to the sun, if you're there in the sun, you will not see anything obscuring it. So if we have this Buddha nature comes out, then you are never obscured, never being affected by any external conditions. So your happiness is 100% guaranteed, 24/7 guaranteed. Right? No external force can hamper, no external force can affect you. And your peace of mind, your happiness can never be disturbed by any external conditions. Okay. So while we have this potential within us, but in our daily life, we see that we are easily affected by external conditions. So what makes that? If we have this potential, why should we be affected? The fact that we are affected means that something's wrong. Your potential, there's nothing wrong with your potential. What is wrong is the self-centered attitude is between you and the external objects. So self-centered attitude, it obscures this incredibly beautiful Buddha nature within us. It obscures that. So if this Buddha nature comes out, then you are perfectly happy, no misery, no fear, no tension, and yet we see that we are full of tensions, we are full of miseries. And what attracts all these things is because your Buddha nature becomes hidden. It is like the hidden treasure under the ground. Okay, so who obscures that? What obscures that incredible treasure within you? Self-centered attitude. So this self-centered attitude is so vicious in obscuring this incredibly here. So this self-centered attitude is so vicious in torturing us, in stealing our peace of happiness, in stealing our peace of mind, in stealing our happiness, eternal happiness, by obscuring this incredibly beautiful Buddha nature. One. Now, this is how the self-centered attitude has been acutely vicious, and this is a shortcoming of the self-centered attitude. It is the viciousness, the cunningness, and this viciousness of the self-centered attitude. One. Number two. Now that the ultimate source of happiness is already obscured. Now we don't have the potential to be happy ourselves from within, meaning from yourself. From your side, it's already obscure. Now we have to depend on others. For example, when you become sick, we become dependent on others, your relatives, your friends, your near and dear ones. Now the self-centered attitude, not only it harms you by obscuring this incredible potential that you have, it now pushes away. It pushes away all the good things, all the good people, all the good environments away from you who are there to give you happiness. This self-centered attitude will push all these things away, right? Okay, how? For example, say the practice of generosity. Practice of generosity. The practice of generosity will give rise, the karmic consequence of practice of generosity is what? Is the wealth. And we do need wealth. It is not that the wealth is poison, right? It is not that the wealth is poison. We do need wealth, because without the wealth, then hunger or poverty, all these miseries are here. So, the wealth is a result of generosity, and what forbids you from practicing generosity? What forbids you from practicing generosity? Again, self-centered attitude. I should not engage in generosity. I should not give this to that people, to that person, so forth. It stops you, right? Self-centered attitude. I need everything. So this self-centered attitude, it stops you from practicing generosity. And then as a result, what happens? So this self-centered attitude, it is pushing away the wealth in the future. When the wealth is totally zero, you suffer poverty. So this poverty is attracted by the self-centered attitude, right? We're not to always keep this in mind. Always keep this in mind that when these teachings happen, we're not to think about always turning the mirror outside. No, turn the mirror towards yourself. So these things should be seen as a mirror on which you are reflected, not others are reflected. For example, you see poor people outside. Oh, this is the result of they're not practicing generosity in the past times. Instead of that, you don't want poverty. Instead of that, you should turn it towards yourself. I don't want poverty. In the next life, I could be the next person in the row, in the street. Who knows? In the next life. Within this very lifetime, some billionaires, they end up in the streets. Right? They are in the streets. We know that. Right? So what I'm saying is that I could be in the next row. So if I don't want poverty, and what attracts poverty is the practice of what forbids you from practicing generosity. And what forbids you from practicing generosity is the feeling of stinginess, not wanting to give away things. Why? Because I want everything. So this I, self-centered attitude. This is the one, now that it has already done its job of you not having the resources within you, the bodhicitta, the greatest resource of the happiness is the Buddha nature within you. That is obscured. Who obscured that? Self-centered attitude. Now, because the inner resource is hidden, now you become vulnerable. You have to depend on others. You have to depend on others for your happiness. Now, if you depend on others for your happiness, you become vulnerable. Who made you vulnerable? The self-centered attitude. Now you become vulnerable. When you become vulnerable, you depend on others. You depend on the help, the kindness of others. And this self-centered attitude, it pushes all others away from you. For example, the more self-centered you are, even your near and dear ones will run away from you. Right? Near and dear ones will run away from you. And then it stops you from, in long term, it stops you from practicing generosity. It stops you practicing the ethical discipline. Say, for example, the practice of ethical discipline, refraining from harming others. Right? Say, what makes you not to practice this ethics, the ethical discipline of refraining from harming others? So, why go to the opposite of refraining from harming others is harm others. What made you to harm others? What made you harm others? Because I should survive and you should not survive. Right? I'm more important than you. Again, this self-centered attitude. So this self-centered attitude, it forbids you from practicing the ethical discipline of non-harming. And because of this, the result is that you will take birth in the lower realms. So again, we don't want to, take birth in the lower realms. And that happens because of the self-centered attitude. So this self-centered attitude, first of all, it makes the ultimate source of happiness, resource within you, remain hidden. And then it made you vulnerable. Once you become vulnerable and dependent on others, then it pushes away all the favorable conditions, from giving you happiness, right? So, because of which, for example, say our sickness, aging, death, and the loss of near and dear ones, all these things are happening somehow connected with our self-centered attitude in the past and in this life, right? And in this, for example, even within this life, we see that, say, for example, somehow the bad things happen one after the other. We see that somehow they are connected with this self-centered attitude in the past. And with the self-centered attitude, when you speak about self-centered attitude, don't try to mix the two. Your self-centered attitude and you, don't mix the two, right? You distinguish the two. You are the one who is going to become Buddha, and self-centered attitude is not going to become Buddha. Self-centered attitude is to be discarded. Always distinguish the two, right? So be angry towards self-centered attitude. Don't be angry towards the other cherishing mind, right? So self-centered attitude is so vicious that it harms us in two ways. One, it steals or it obscures the ultimate resource of happiness, which is the Buddha nature within us. One, it makes us vulnerable, thus making us vulnerable. One. Number two, once we become vulnerable, we are made dependent on others. Had it been the case that our Buddha nature comes out, we are never dependent on others. We become Buddhas. Now we are made vulnerable, we are dependent on others. The moment you are dependent on others should be there. But then the self-centered attitude, it pushes all others, all conducive factors, other things away from you, right? And then we become desperate. We become acutely vulnerable. So who made us all these things is a self-centered attitude. And okay, just see that all misgivings, bad experiences that we go through, somehow they're connected to self-centered attitude. And be as creative and your own life experiences, with your own life experiences, whatever miseries that you go through, somehow, right? Somehow it is our insensibility to always befriend with a self-centered attitude that now we are suffering. It's not because that you are bad. No, it is because of you being very unwisely going with the self-centered attitude, unwisely befriending with the self-centered attitude, that now you are suffering. Okay, so this is what we need to know. Reflect on the demerits of cherishing self. Okay. Now, point number 3 is reflecting on the merits of cherishing others. Reflecting on the merits of cherishing others. Okay. So here, we need to think of the opposites. We need to think of the opposites. For example, say today we have His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And then, say 2,500 years ago, we had, say, Bodhicitta Through, right? So Bodhicitta Through, just one person is able to give benefit, to innumerable millions and billions of human beings for the next, up to this point, like 2,500 years, is all because of this abandoning the self-centered attitude. And whereas in our case, we want to be as popular as Bodhicitta Through, we all want to be as popular as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like this, like Mother Teresa, like Jesus Christ, right? And like this, but then we don't become one like them. We don't want to be as popular as Mahatma Gandhi. Why? Because our self-centered attitude is there saying that you cannot become popular. Self-centered attitude is there, which forbids us from becoming one like them. Why they are so popular is because of the other cherishing mind. So other cherishing mind, what we want is actually given rise to by the other cherishing mind, right? And what we don't want is actually given by the self-centered attitude. So the more we think about our state, the more we think about the state of all these great saints in the past, we see that the the distinction between the self-centered attitude and self-grasping ignorance. How the self-grasping ignorance has been so vicious, so cunning. How the self-centered attitude, Bodhicitta mind, is so beautiful, so appealing, right? Okay. Say for example, according to in the Chinese tradition, for example, the Chinese master Xuanzang, right? So what a pain he went through, just walking all the way from China to India to learn, to practice Dharma, right? So had it not been for Bodhicitta within him, that is the final power which gave him that energy to come all the way to India, then go back to China, and then propagate such a brilliant teaching of Bodhicitta, Mahayana teaching in China. It's impossible without the practice of Bodhicitta. So therefore, if you think of these great saints, then we see that the Bodhicitta mind is acutely beneficial, helpful, and this is the which guarantees us our happiness. Okay. Now it is that same. So this is what the one thing that we need to keep in mind in relation to the 6 perfections that Buddha himself said, and further explained by Aranyagajuna, that the practice of generosity gives rise to wealth. Practice of morality, ethical discipline will give rise to higher births. Practice of patience will give rise to radiance. The practice of joyous effort will give rise to elegance. The practice of samadhi will give rise to peace. Practice of wisdom will give rise to liberation. And the practice of great compassion will give rise to all. Right? Let me say this again. Practice of generosity will give rise to, well, resources. Practice of morality will give rise to higher births, favorable births. Practice of patience will give rise to radiance. The practice of joyous effort will give rise to elegance. Practice of samadhi or meditative concentration will give rise to peace. Practice of wisdom will give rise to liberation from samsara. And the practice of great compassion will give rise to awe. Right? So, after the practice of the individual perfections, we say, wow, this is the result which we can possibly achieve through the practice of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, joyous effort, samadhi, wisdom. You practice a great compassion, and all results of the individual 6 perfections will all be accrued by this practice of the great compassion alone. You got it? Practice of what? Generosity will give rise to? Wealth or resources. Practice of morality gives rise to higher births or the favorable births. The practice of the patience will give rise to radiance, meaning that, for example, say some people, for example, I remember my teacher, one of my teachers, the Gyanam Rinpa, amazing great teacher. If it happens, then I may give some accounts of him once in a while. Just if you are with him in his hermitage, if you are with him in his very simple, small hermitage, you will not think that he was the same person that we were meeting him outside. Right? Outside, you will see him glowing with radiance. Literally, you won't believe. Such a glow is there. So this is a result of the practice of patience. Then the practice of joyous effort is the elegance. Some people, they have such an elegant appearance. Very elegant appearance. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when traveling, you could see that elegance there. So this is the result of joyous effort. And the practice of samadhi, samadhi is to quell your mind. As you quell mind, peace is experienced. Samadhi is a peace. Then the practice of the wisdom is to liberate us from samsara altogether. Right? The wisdom. Because samsara is the manifestation of this self-grasping ignorance. And with wisdom, self-grasping ignorance is eliminated and you are liberated from samsara altogether. So wisdom gives rise to liberation. And then great compassion gives rise to all. Right? Okay. If you really want to go for shortcut, if you really want to go for shortcut for all these 6, go for great compassion. That is the most meaningful, wise way to go for a shortcut means. Right? Okay. So we reflect on the demerits of cherishing oneself. We reflect on the merits of cherishing others. Okay. What is next? Point number 4. Point number 4. The practice of taking the miseries of others with emphasis on compassion. Okay. So point number 4 and point number 5 combined together is known as the practice of Tonglen. Tonglen is a Tibetan word. Tonglen is a Tibetan word. T-O-N-G, but don't pronounce it as Tong. It is Tong. Tong. Okay, yeah. Tong. And then Len. L-E-N. Tonglen. So number 4 is the practice of Len, and number 5 is practice of Tong. So combined together, Tibetans call it Tonglen practice. Tonglen practice. And here I like to make a very strong comment here, the practice of Tonglen. Point number 4 and point number 5. Some people, they emphasize so much on the practice of Tonglen. Some people, they emphasize so much on the practice of Tonglen. There's nothing wrong yet, but there's one warning to be kept in mind. There's one warning that needs to be kept in mind. The danger is that unless you include all the 9 steps, if you just pick up point number 4 and point number 5 as you practice, the danger is that sometimes you may feel the burnout. Sometimes you can feel the burnout. You may stop the practice altogether. At one point, I was going to Pondicherry from Delhi, and then the host, they came to receive me at the airport, and then from the airport to the place, in a car, there was the person was asking me some questions on this Tonglen. And then I warned the person that, okay, the Tonglen practice is very good practice. At the same time, you must do that in a holistic way, all the 9 steps, rather than just being very selective. And the person started to share her own experience. With the Tonglen practice, at one point she said that she felt that she can't really bear the pains of others. Just thinking of the pains of others simply makes her sick, and then she does not do the practice anymore. And I told her, yes, exactly, this is what's going to happen. Whereas if you include all 9 steps, the more you see the pain of others, the more you feel like doing this practice. It will not kill you, right? So therefore, it is very important to keep in mind that the practice of Tonglen, the point number 4 and 5, are to be done in conjunction with the remaining the 7 steps. Okay, so number 4 is the practice of taking the miseries of others on yourself with the emphasis on compassion. So here what we do is that this is purely, so look, say the practice of the Bodhicitta is very simple. Experiencing is very difficult. And learning is very simple. So say, to take the suffering of others onto yourself with emphasis and compassion. You know all the words. And compassion, you know, some may say compassion is just love. No, compassion has a very specific meaning. Loving kindness has very specific meaning. Compassion is a state of love, a mental state of love which wishes others to be freed of suffering. Mental state of love which wishes others to be freed of suffering. Whereas the loving kindness is slightly different. Loving kindness is a state of love which wishes others to be endowed with happiness. So one is looking at from the suffering side, and the other is looking at it from the happiness side. So compassion is wishing others to be freed of suffering, and the loving kindness is wishing others to be endowed with happiness. So this is the difference. Now point four is seeing that self-centered attitude, it attracts all miseries on yourself. And Adisharic mind gives you all happiness. Knowing that, then you deliberately, then what happens? Then you feel so much of love and affection towards others. Okay, so how many of you feel same? Okay, how many of you have since our childhood, particularly imagine you go back in time. You go back in time when you were age 4 or 5, right? And tell me, who do you love the most? Say your mother or your father, right? Okay, tell me why. Why? Okay, anyone? Okay, this is not philosophy. Right? Anybody can give the answers. Okay, just tell me, what makes you as a young girl or a young boy, age 4 or 5, love your father, love your mother the most? Why? Why? Affection? What makes you have such affection towards your mother? Huh?
She gave you affection, so much love.
Exactly, because you received the maximum love and affection from your mother, right? Because you received the maximum love and affection from the mother, your affection flows towards that person, right? Okay, now tell me, in what way the child receives the love and affection from the mother? How does the child know that the affection is flowing from the mother? Tell me, anyone?
Behavior.
Behavior in what?
In the actions and the things.
Exactly. Same. You're very hungry, right? At the moment you cry, your neighbor will not come to feed you. Immediately, the same person will rush to feed you. Same person, who's that? Your mother comes to rush to feed you. And again, okay, other things I'm going to say. Right? Okay. Say again. Say there's another boy or girl who has a toy. You do not have a toy, right? You see the toy, yeah. You want it, and then you start crying. And again, the same person comes to give you a toy, right? Who is that? Your mother. So you see that what you want is all being provided to you by someone. Provided to you by your mother or your father, right? So, all what you want, the benefit is all coming from one person. So, the more the benefit that you see coming from someone, the more the love flows towards that person from your side. Okay, this is the mechanism of how the love and affection works. You getting it? Okay, so both methods, the first method, the sevenfold cause effect method, and the method which we are learning today, equalizing and exchanging self for others. These two methods, the basic ground is to cultivate this love. At the moment, say what is your experience? Okay, say give $10 to your mother. What is your reaction? Easy or difficult? Very easy, $10, right? And then $10 to your neighbor. What should I give? This is the question. And $10 to your enemy? No? So our reaction is very different. Why? Because you feel giving something towards your mother, because you will feel the love. Because of this love, it easily moves. And to a stranger, no love, no hatred, right? You ask question, okay, what should I give? Right? To the enemy, you will say no. What makes you to say no? Your mind, right? And then if somebody forces you, give, right? If you don't give, you are the penalty. Then when you give, what happens? Your mind says no. How do you see that? In your mind, you could feel not. In your mind, when your heart, you could feel a knot there. It's not really going there. It's not really going there, right? So as your hand is just give the money there, but there's not there, it's pulling you. You could feel it inside. Literally, you try it tomorrow. Try it tomorrow and see how it works inside. So there's a knot there. So this knot is what forbids you. This knot is a knot of self-centered attitude. Once you release this knot, other cherishing mind comes in. And what happens? The self-centered, the mental obscuration is cleansed. And the Buddha nature comes out. So this knot is there. Okay, so with this, what we do is that point number 4. Point number 4, the practice of taking the miseries of others with yourself, with emphasis on compassion. So here what we do is that we think about all sentient beings, particularly say your two grandparents and all your family members, all the other sentient beings, everyone, including the tiny insects, cats, dogs, and so forth. And seeing the same, seeing finally that I'm benefited by cherishing others, because you have thought a lot about the benefit of cherishing others. And by being selfish, I suffer a lot, because you have thought about step number 2, reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. Because of these reflection of the first point number 2 and point number 3, now your mind becomes freely wanting to embrace others and freely wanting to say no to the self-centered attitude. So at that point, you start cherishing others. You start loving others. As you start loving others, then you can practice point number 4 and point number 5, right? So, say for example, if you are to go to help your mother, who's the ailing mother in the hospital, and you have to nurse 24 hours, and then you have to nurse for free. You have to nurse for free the neighbor with whom you don't know the neighbor so well, or a stranger. You have to nurse for free, and then you have to nurse for free your enemy, right? Which of the 3 you will feel the burnout? In the third case, not the first one. It's the same thing, but your mind will feel easily burnout because you don't have the love. When you have the love, the burnout case will not happen. Right? So therefore, this practice, practice number 4, this becomes so rich only if you include the point number 1 and 2 and 3. Right? So with these 3 things, then the love flows towards others. With this love, then you feel like practicing Tonglen, taking the miseries of others towards yourself. And how to do that? So there are so many ways taught by the teachers. Keep in mind, yesterday I told you, in the practice of Bodhicitta, you can be as creative. With the practice of Bodhicitta, you can be as creative, but within some bound, within some border, right? Okay, there must be some structure there. Okay, so within that, say the practice of taking the miseries of others towards yourself, with emphasis on the compassion. Think about how all these dear mother sentient beings, how all the sentient beings who who are being exceptionally responsible in giving rise to your other cherishing mind, and because of which all your happinesses, so they're so kind to me. Because they're so kind to me, and then because they're so kind to me, what happens? You could see the benefit coming from them towards you. The more the benefit that you see coming from them towards you, your affection flows. So with this affection, when you see the miseries that they are going through, compassion automatically flows. Right? Okay. With this compassion, seeing how all the sentient beings, they're suffering terribly, just like what I am suffering in samsara, they're all equally suffering terribly. Then because of the tremendous love that you feel towards them, then you think of taking the miseries of them towards you. So how? You can do that in 3 ways. Taking the misery, because the miseries is of 3 kinds. Suffering is of 3 kinds, what are they? Suffering. suffering of change, and pervasive conditioned suffering. Three kinds of suffering. Suffering of change, and pervasive conditioned suffering. Okay, suffering is also known as the evident suffering. Because in English, suffering doesn't make any sense. Right? So it's a literal translation from Tibetan to English. Okay, so the better would be evident suffering. Evident suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive conditioned suffering. So this we have to know as what these three are. By the way, till 9 o'clock. Okay, we have another 11 minutes. Okay, so okay, to quickly go through what these three sufferings are. First one is what? Evident suffering. Evident suffering is all the experience of pain, which everybody can identify as pain, including the dogs and cats, right? Any experience of pain which anybody can identify as a pain is known as evident suffering, such as headache, sickness, then what? Trauma, right? Then what? No suffering in Singapore? Accidents. Then? No? Sickness. Death. Okay, so these which we can easily identify them as suffering is known as the manifest suffering, the first one. And the second one is what? Suffering change. Okay, what does it mean by suffering change, anyone?
When it's very hot outside and you go into the hot and it's very cold and you want to go back to the heat because it's too cold inside.
Okay, tell me, just pinpoint. Just give me one example and say this suffering change. To be in the icon is suffering change or outside is suffering change, which is both.
Yes.
First one is also suffering change.
Yes.
How being in the icon is suffering change? Huh? It's too cold. If it's pleasant, then it's okay. Then it's, huh? Too cold is a manifest suffering. It's the evident suffering. It's suffering. Too cold. Huh? Okay, anyone who can help me to understand as to what first, let's give an example of suffering change. After giving an example of suffering change, we have to see in what way it is suffering. Okay, anyone? Huh?
Lost my handphone.
Say it again?
Lost my handphone. My handphone.
Lost the handphone. Lost the handphone.
Lost his handphone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lost.
Okay. Losing the handphone. Losing the handphone, you feel happy or unhappy?
Unhappy.
You are very unhappy.
I don't have it now.
Okay. You losing your handphone, is it unhappy experience to you? Right?
Yes.
Is it unhappy? Okay. This is evident suffering. So evident suffering and the three sufferings, they are opposites. Three sufferings, they are mutually exclusive. Three sufferings, they are mutually exclusive, which means that if you belong to the first category, you cannot belong to the second category. If you're a boy, you cannot be a girl. If you're a girl, you cannot be a boy. If you're transgender, you cannot be first and second. Right? So what I'm saying is that these three are mutually exclusive. Okay, suffering of change, manifest suffering cannot be suffering of change. Anyone who would give an example of suffering change? Quick.
Contaminated pleasures.
Huh?
Contaminated pleasures.
Give an example.
Food we eat.
The good taste. The good taste of a chocolate. Okay. The good taste of chocolate. The good taste of the bite of the chocolate. Okay. Is this pleasant or unpleasant experience? Pleasant, good taste, pleasant. Okay. So what we consider as pleasant, what we consider as happiness, is nothing but of the misery nature. Right? Okay. Because this is pleasant. Pleasant means it is not unpleasant. It is not identified as misery by everyone. Right? And yet it is a misery. First we have to know that all what the mundane beings identify as happiness, all what mundane beings identify as happiness is they fall under suffering of change. Don't forget this. At the same time, feel free to ask me questions as to how this is suffering then. Right? Okay. The experience of the, and how popular is Momo? Huh? What do you call it? Momo or what? No. Here, you call it Mandarin? Dumplings. Okay. How many of you like dumplings? You like? Okay. Which dumpling you like? The first piece dumpling you like, or the 50th piece dumpling you like? Huh? Okay. The first one or the 100 one. How much do you eat usually? How many pieces you eat usually? 5. Okay. That's the first piece or the 20th piece. Which is more delicious? First one. Okay. So always pick up the first one from all the restaurants. Pick up the first one from all the restaurants and then eat 50s. They're all the first ones. There's no difference between the first and the 50th. You're getting it? There's no difference between the first and the 50th. The first one is tasty, is very deceptive. And the 50th one and the first one, taste-wise there's no difference. But 50th one, will throw you up. Right? Okay. So now look, we see that what seems to be so tempting is actually of the nature of throwing up. Right? There's no difference between the first and the 50th. You can eat the 50th first, and first will keep last. Right? Okay. Which means that what seems to give rise to happiness, it changes. It changes to miseries. Right? It changes to miseries. Okay. Now worse than that, this, even the first piece of the momo, even the first piece of the dumpling, even this is of pain. Ordinary people will see this as happiness, pleasant, but it is of pain. How it is pain? Anyone you know? Okay, is there anyone who likes to help me? How it is pain? How it is miseries? Okay, keep this in mind. This is very important. This is very important. Okay, it's very important. Say, if someone is in prison, and the prison is not heavily guarded. The prison is not heavily guarded, maybe because the government may not be able to spend so much on the prisons. Right? Prison is not heavily guarded, and the prisoners can easily run away. But there's one prisoner who is going to be punished severely after 1 month. And the government handed the prisoner in the hand of the prison guard. Make sure that after 1 month he's here for the punishment, for the penalty. So the prison guard, what the prison guard did was that the prison guard, because the prisoner can easily escape, yes, no? Okay, so the prison guard had to be so careful that the prisoner doesn't run away. So the best thing would be the prison guard would create gardens and would give good food, right? Udon and these things, momos, to the prisoner, and always chat, ideas, give him the impression that this is not a prison. Right? Okay, now tell me, then after 1 month, the next day, you are into the severe penalty the next day, right? Severe penalty, whatever consequence. So, what made you not run away? Tell me. What made you not run away? Who forced you to be staying? Who forced you to stay in this prison? Who forced you? No one forced you. What made you not run away? Tell me. Because you thought that because of the allurement of the prison. Because of the allurement of the prison. What allurement? Good food, good company, and these things, right? Given by the prison guard. You getting it? So these trapped you in prison, and then you suffer the consequence. Likewise, where are we? We're in paradise, we're in prison, we are in samsara. We are in samsara. And who forced us to be in samsara? We stay in samsara at gunpoint? And who forced us in samsara? Who forced us in samsara? This is the question. Right? What is good in samsara? If samsara is always sickness, aging, death, there's nothing environment, nobody will be in samsara. Everybody would have been achieved Buddhahood right being. So there must be something there in samsara to allure us, What is that thing? The pleasures of samsara. That is so vicious. These are so vicious pleasures in samsara. It's so vicious. That traps us. If you calculate in our own life, all our experiences, say experiences of pleasure, experiences of pain, neutral experiences, the cheatings, and all these things, if you just put all these things, we see that the pleasures is so less. And the miseries, tensions, they're just like 1,000 times more than the pleasures. And yet, these pleasures trap us in samsara. Right? These pleasures trap us in samsara. So therefore, what traps us in samsara? This is vicious. Yes, no? What traps us in samsara? What traps us in misery? This is vicious. Then later on, if the person, after going through this severe punishment, if again temporarily put back to the prison, then the prison guard again give him food like this, will you be tempted by the prison guard's food and so forth? You will not. You will run away. You're getting it? Okay. Now you see that this prison guard is so vicious in holding you back in a very cunning way. So the earlier gestures of the prison guard, which seem to be so alluring, so tempting, is all just trap. It's all just trap. And the fishing, whatever fishing. So fishing, they use what? The bait. No fish will come with all these pleasures, they are like the baits. All these the pleasures of samsara, they are like the baits. If you come to know that this is a bait, it's not a real food, will you go there? We will not go there. In fact, we will feel so angry towards this bait. So likewise, if you really come to know what samsara is, then what traps on samsara is nothing else. It's only this mundane pleasures, mundane happiness. This is what traps us in samsara. Right? So therefore, it's so vicious. What is vicious is misery. What is vicious is suffering. So therefore, it is not happiness, it is actually of the suffering. Yet, it's not that everybody identifies that as suffering. It's only a handful of people identifies that as suffering. Okay, so in this connection, we need to know, I'd like to share a story with you. Bodhicitta Through actually taught this, he put it in the form of story. So there was a group of people, about 100 people, and they were all going for outing, picnic alongside a river. And everyone was settled, they were preparing to cook something, they were just into, say games and songs, dance and so forth. There were three people who were not at all take part in the picnic. They were all trying to cross the river. The river was so ferocious. Still, two of them were trying to cross the river. And then two of them were telling others that, hey, there's no time for picnic. Come, cross the river. Soon there's going to be flood. And this, no. And they would say, you are foolish. We come here to picnic. We come here for the picnic, and now you're not enjoying it. You're very stupid. If you want to go, go. And two of them were struggling. They are not at all wasting time to picnic. They were just struggling to cross the river. Two of them crossed the river. Soon after that, within another 5-10 minutes, then the flood simply washed away everything, and all the remaining 100 people, they were all killed because of the flood, right? So 3 of them, they were not swayed, they were not lured by the picnic, and because of which they escaped. And whereas the remaining people, they were lured by the picnic, finally they were being killed by the torrents of the flood. So likewise, the suffering, the experience of the mundane happiness is suffering of change in the form that it is the suffering which is the worst, which really traps us in samsara. And what's the third one? Pervasive conditioned suffering. Anyone? Pervasive conditioned suffering.
5 aggregates.
5 aggregates. 1. Good. Anyone else? Pervasive conditioned suffering. Involuntary birth. Involuntary birth in samsara. Right? Okay. So 5 aggregates is a good example, illustration of samsara in the pervasive conditioned suffering, and the involuntary birth is also say good illustration of the pervasive conditioned suffering. Pervasive conditioned suffering is, they say, being under the force of afflictions and contaminated karmas. Being under the force of afflictions and contaminated karmas, right? So this is the, say, a form of meaning of the pervasive conditioned suffering. Being under the force, being under the sway of afflictions and contaminated karmas. So that is responsible for giving rise to the 5 aggregates, giving rise to the involuntary birth in samsara, right? So being under the sway, being under the force of the afflictions and contaminated karmas. This is a pervasive conditioned suffering. Okay, and they particularly say some of the newcomers, you may be feeling, why is it not pervasive, right? Why is it not as conditioned? All these questions are there, right? Did it come to you or did it not come to you? If it did come to you, then I will skip. If it came to you, then we'll go ahead with that. Came, not came? Okay. Are you sure? Okay. So why these are known as pervasive conditioned suffering? So ideally speaking, we have to know all these things in great detail, right? Say, the whole samsara is classified into 3 levels: desire realm, form realm, and formless realm. Whole samsara is divided into 3 groups: desire realm, form realm, and formless realm. Right? Okay. So how about the Singapore train system? Are there 3 different classes? First class, second class, third class? No? No? So in many of the other countries, the trains, when you go to buy the tickets, train tickets, there are 3 classes: first class, second class, third class. So what is the difference? What's the difference? In one you pay less, in one you pay higher, and in one you pay highest. So why you pay different way? Facilities that you get is different. You're getting it? Okay, likewise, say desire realm is the third class, and the form realm is the second class, and the formless realm is the first class. So these are the 3 levels where the samsaric beings take birth. Right? Samsaric beings, they take birth: desire realm, form realm, and formless realm. In the desire realm, people are more chaotic. This is where we are. Right? Desire is not somewhere else. Where we are. This is desire realm. Right? So it's so chaotic. Right? It's so chaotic. Okay. So we need the traffic lights, all these things. In the form and formless, there's no traffic lights. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, say, the suffering of change, the first, no, suffering. The first suffering is only in the desire realm, not in the form and the formless. Keep this in mind. The first suffering, which is suffering, or the evident suffering, is only in the desire realm. Form and formless realm, these two are freed of the first suffering. Now what is the second suffering? The suffering of change. The second suffering is in desire realm plus within the form realm there are three divisions. Within the form realm there are three divisions. First, second, and third. In these three, there is the suffering change. And then the fourth one, and the formless realm, suffering change is not there. Right? Suffering change exists where? In the desire realm, and then in the first three levels of the form realm. On the formless realm, the fourth level of the form realm and the formless realm, suffering change is absent. Right? Now the third suffering is everywhere, in all three realms. It pervades all three realms. So therefore, third suffering is known as the pervasive. Conditioned meaning that suffering is conditioned by the force of afflictions and contaminant elements. Pervasive, conditioned suffering. Why pervasive? Because this suffering pervades all three realms. Pervasive. Why conditioned? Conditioned by the force of karmas and afflictions. You getting it? Okay. With this, okay, now, okay. So what we do is that the practice of taking the miseries of others with emphasis on compassion. When we do that, we just breathe in. We breathe in. Imagine that all sentient beings are there in their respective miseries. Then as you breathe in through your left nostril. Imagine that you're breathing through your left nostril, and then all the suffering, the suffering of all sentient beings, they're all sucked in. They're all sucked in the form of scorpions, in the form of snakes, in the form of black soot, in the form of very polluted water like this. They simply gush in through your left nostril as you breathe in, and then they just go in. And inside, who's staying inside? Self-grasping ignorance and self-centered attitude. These two are so happily sitting inside. And then all the dirts, all the suffering, they gush in the form of very dirty water, scorpions, and the snakes and so forth gushing in through. And then they just go there to fight, to just eat up the self-centered attitude, self-grasping ignorance with you, right? And then they're all gone. Again, when you breathe in, so we can do like 3 times, taking the suffering of suffering. Then the next 3 times, taking the suffering of change. So that is the evilness of the suffering of change. Evilness of the pleasures of samsara. Evilness of the all the just again sucking the same way. Then likewise, the suffering, the pervasive conditioned suffering, you take it 3 times. Okay. And then imagine that all sentient beings, they are now released. They are now freed of all these 3 kinds of sufferings. 1. Then next one is step number 5. Step number 5 is giving your happiness with emphasis on loving kindness. Okay, so it's already 9:15. I don't want to take it too long. So we'll continue tomorrow. Okay. We'll quickly do the introduction prayer, maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, let's turn to page 309. Page 309, the verses written in Bodhicitta. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I shall enlighten. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate a full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge to the true religion, I confess the negativities individually, I rejoice with the worship for all the beings, I hold the precious Buddha in my heart. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then I too remain and dispel and reduce the evil. The path of the union of conscious compassion is loosely explained by the control of the Dharma and the wings of this owner. With the lotus soul as anything else, we subjugate you that relations are fulfilled spontaneously. May the operations of evil thoughts and deeds, all the negative forces of humans or non-humans, who harm or manage through perverted prayers against the teachings of the Buddhas, be totally vanquished through the power of the truth of the 3 jewels. Throughout my future lifetimes, may I always be guided by intuition and be able to uphold the Dharma in general and keep teachings on the Heavenly Ocean in particular, even across my life. Okay, good night. See you tomorrow.